Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 21st episode of Capital League Insights series. Our topic for discussion today is estate planning. If there is one thing that the pandemic has taught us, it is to expect the unexpected and prepare for the uncertainties of life, no matter how remote the possibility of their occurrence. In the context of wealth management, the uncertainties have led to an increased awareness and interest in estate planning. In fact, data shows that drafting a will has become one of the most searched items on Google. Our estate plan reflects our wishes and intentions on how we want our estate to be transferred in our absence. While it can be as simple as we want it to be, a well thought out and structured plan helps with smooth transmission of the assets, protecting our family from any undue delays, hassles, family disputes, or any kind of wealth destruction. Like any financial plan, an estate plan also has to be aligned to each family's unique requirements. There are many families where children are settled overseas, which calls for an awareness of cross-border taxation and succession laws. Their families with minor or special children. Their families with single men or women without any heirs. Each of these situations warrant a customized solution. So, to know more about the nuances of estate planning and how it can be applied to our own unique family situation, we have with us today Tariq Abubakar, Managing Director, Amicorp Trustees. Tariq has extensive knowledge and vast experience on the subject, having worked for more than 15 years in providing effective estate planning solutions to successful families and business houses. Welcome, Tariq, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Vinita.
So, Tariq, we've collated various questions that we are frequently asked on this subject. We can discuss these over the next 45 minutes. And post our discussion, we will open the forum for questions from our guests. I would request all of you to please type in your questions in the Q&A section on the bottom of your screens, and please address them to the panelists. So, Tariq, let's start with a broad overview of estate planning. What all does it entail? Is it just about the transmission of our assets, or does it go beyond that?
Okay, so estate planning as a term. Let's understand a few more basics before we get into direct explanations to the whole subject. One is that if you don't plan for your estate, which means someone from your team, someone from our team has not reached out to the clients, and they are deceased intestate, which means without a will. In that case, what happens first? Okay, though we are saying that a will is important, we should be making a will, we should plan for your succession. But let's understand what happens if someone has not been contacted at the right time and he does not have a will now. And in his absence, what happens? The assets will be distributed as per the religion that you follow. So there are no state laws, there are no country laws, there is no law for Delhi separate, no law for Maharashtra separate. There is one flat state law, which is the religion that you follow. So in case of a Hindu family, assets will be equally distributed to all legal heirs. And when we say all legal heirs, we mean male, female, there is no distinction there. The mother is also considered as a legal heir or a dependent. The father is not considered as a dependent. So say, giving an example, if I am a Hindu by birth and I follow Hinduism, on my demise, my mom, my wife, and my children will all be subject to inheritance from my assets. But in a very common family situation, the clients that we meet, very often they have this one thing saying that, after me, everything should go to my wife. After my wife, everything should come to me. In absence of both of us, it should go to the children. So if any one of us have that kind of a wish, then we need to override natural succession. And the easiest way to do is by doing up a will. The other important part is that when you say equal to all legal heirs, what do you mean? I mean, you have one house, you have two sons. What do you expect? Both the sons to start living in that one house? You expect one to pay rent to the other? You expect them to sell the house and give the money to both of them equally? So equal, which is not defined clearly, is a very misleading term. Though as a family, you feel that, you've done the right thing by giving everything equal. But in that equal also, you have to be specifically specifying what do you mean? Because otherwise, you're going to leave a lot of interpretation to others and which leads to confusion. So in a Hindu family, equally distribution to all legal heirs, whereas in a Muslim family, it is as per Sharia law, which means the male member gets, it says 1/3, 2/3 distribution, the male member gets twice of what the female member gets. In a Parsi and Christian family, it is again equal. Okay, that's one crucial part which we need to understand. The other important part is that people come across a lot of families who say that, I have everything, I have only one son, everything is going to go to him. Why do I need a succession plan? Okay, so the important part here is that there are two broad categories of assets. One is inherited assets and one is self-acquired assets. If I am deceased without a will and my son, who's the only son, inherits these assets in his favor, it will be treated as inherited assets for him. Which means tomorrow when he has two children, he cannot will this asset to one of them because it is inherited asset and it has to go as per inheritance law, which is equal to both legal heirs. But even if I have one son and I have willed it to him, so the intention is to give it to him only. But if I have given it to him in form of a will, in his hand, it is treated as self-acquired asset, which means he can will it further to whoever he wants. So how he inherits decides on how he can transfer it further. So by just doing up a simple paperwork of doing up a will, you've given the flexibility to your son to choose how he wants to distribute his assets after him. By not doing it, it still goes to your son, but you've now locked him up that he cannot dispose his assets as per his wish. So these are very small, minute things which we probably don't know or we don't give it so much importance.
Right. So you're saying that if somebody passes away without, let's say, a will, it's the religion that would decide who gets how much. But apart from that, what is the process of transfer of assets? People need to apply for a succession certificate. So there's a lot of confusion in that area. So could you clarify that?
So again, without a will, you need a succession certificate or a legal heir standing. So a succession certificate is nothing but a document stamped and approved by the court that these are the set of legal heirs. And then the assets can get transferred to the legal heirs as per the religion, which is equal in case of a Hindu. A succession certificate is something that you have to get it granted from the court, and it takes anywhere in the range of 6 months to 8 months. If you know the right people, you could pull it up in 4 months, but on an average, it takes that much time. At the same time, during that process, everything comes to a standstill because neither can you transfer out, neither can you operate the account of a deceased, and everything comes to a standstill.
Right. So, and what about a family arrangement?
See, a family arrangement, what is a family arrangement? An understanding between the family that after me, this will happen, that will happen. Or during my lifetime, this is something that I'm gifting you and this is something that I'm gifting somebody else. So that is nothing but understanding between the family, which is not really an alternative to succession. Because even during a family arrangement, you've agreed that you are distributing assets to the legal heirs today. You may still retain some assets to yourself. And you may still need a will for that. So it is not a holistic solution. Second is that how wise is it to give away assets during your lifetime? I don't know. We have seen a lot of cases, and the largest one prominent on media is the Singhania case, where parents have in good faith given away wealth to the children and they have faced a lot of problems after that. So giving away wealth during your lifetime is not a great idea according to me. At the same time, planning for it is important. And if you're making a family succession that's going to go after you, then it is as good as doing up a will.
So why not do a will in that case?
So why do documents which are not so widely accepted. Whereas a will is a static document, it comes in play on the demise of an individual. You can document it to the T you want. You can express it in the way you want and execute it in a simplest manner. Because again, family arrangements attract stamp duty. A will does not attract stamp duty. A family settlement, family arrangement, all of these will attract stamp duty.
Okay. So a lot of families, especially small nuclear families, when there's one child, two children, they feel just having a nomination and joint account is enough because that also enables a transfer to the children. How does that work? And what are your views on that?
Okay, so a nominee is not a guardian, is not a legal heir. Okay, wealth advisors like us have gone ahead and always insisted to the client that, sir, please make a nominee. Insurance companies have always insisted that you should have a nominee. Banks have always insisted that we should have a nominee. What that really means is that the institutes are not responsible for your money. They are asking you to put a nominee so that they can shy away from their accountability by passing it on to the nominee. Because of which, in our mind, we've assumed that the nominee is a legal heir or the nominee is the rightful owner. But in all cases, the nominee is a sure guardian. If you go by the technical legal term of a nominee, the nominee's role is to inherit the property and distribute it to all legal heirs in equal proportion. So we have a lot of clients who we come across saying that, and I have two portfolios that I run. One portfolio, the nominee is my elder son. One portfolio, my nominee is my elder daughter or my daughter. So they, in their mind, they want to give it away to them. But a nominee can be contested. The role of the nominee is to pool in all the assets and equally distribute it to all legal heirs. He or she is not the rightful owner. So if both the portfolios are doing well and both the values are the same, maybe the family will accept it. But if one's done well and one not done very well, the other guy can contest for it.
Right. So will, of course, is the most popular form of estate planning. What are the things that need to be considered while making a will? What are the do's and don'ts? How do you make it foolproof? Because we've seen that wills are often contested and there are disputes that lead to it.
See, there are very common mistakes that people overlook. Okay. One, there are three main parties to a will. One is a testator, whose will has been written or who's writing the will. The other is a set of beneficiaries who are going to benefit out of the will. And the key person to that will is the executor. The one who's going to execute the will on behalf of the settlor or the testator, the deceased, for the benefit of the beneficiaries. So the executor becomes a very important person in this case. He is the one who's supposed to do the running around. He's the one who's supposed to go to the court and get a probate in princely states like Bombay and Calcutta. He's the one who's supposed to transfer the assets. So it becomes the role of an executor to do all of this.
So I'm sorry, is it necessary to have an executor? Sorry to stop you there. Is it mandatory or
it is mandatory
to have an executor?
It is like a car without a driver. I mean, yes, nowadays we're seeing that, but technology has not come to that extent for wills. So, yes, it is mandatory to have an executor because it is his responsibility and accountability to do things in the absence of the testator. Now, a very common mistake that we've seen is that most of the time, our best friends or our close friends who we can count on and depend on is 2 years or 3 years plus minus our age. Very rarely do we have somebody who's 30 years younger to me who's very close to me as a friend. And we tend to choose that person as an executor. So at the age of 80, when he's 83 or 78, you're expecting him to go to court, run around, do justice to your family, very difficult. That's one. The other is that at times we make beneficiaries executors. Okay, so if you have 3 beneficiaries and you think the elder son is the most knowledgeable and you make him the executor, and he's going to get probably 20% or 30% of the will. He may keep deferring execution. Dekhte, karte, ho jayega, what's the rush, what's the hurry? Because the moment it is executed, the 100% house that he's living in is now going to be parted into 3 parts. So appointing an executor is very important. Identifying the right person with the right skill set who has the knowledge and the time to do justice to your part in your absence. In a lot of cases, we've now seen that clients are preferring to appoint professional executors. Because what happens is that the children are either too busy in their lives, either children are overseas, or they don't understand the legal nuances. They still have to go to a lawyer after that. And then the lawyer charges a hefty fees. So from day one, they prefer to appoint a professional corporate executor because we would like to believe that the corporate will outlive an individual. Because sometimes we've also seen wills that the executor has been appointed, but the executor has predeceased the testator and they've not changed the will. In that case, then the beneficiaries have to go to the court and get a grant from the court to appoint a new executor. So otherwise, a corporate executor is the most easy way to go forward. So that's one part of it. The other is that...
So sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm saying the other part is where we've seen wills which run into like 20 and 30 pages. Okay. I've seen a couple of wills or probably 1 or 2 wills which say that, my family is given the best upbringing. I'm very grateful and grateful to my children. They're very nice people. I mean, you want to write a thank you note? Great. Keep that separate. Don't make that a part of your will. Your will should be specific to the point, as simple as you can keep it, so that it is interpreted in only one way. Because English can be interpreted in many ways. But if you make a very lengthy will, you make a lot of combinations in that, you do a lot of ifs and buts in it, then it can be interpreted in multiple ways by multiple people. And you don't want that to happen. So you keep your will precise, to the point, and as simple as you can. A handwritten will, a computerized will written in regional language, all wills are considered as wills. You can make as many number of wills, but the last will is considered as your final will. So we do come across clients who say, what's the hurry? I'll do it at a later stage. I mean, how do you know when the stage will come? What assurity do you have that you will see that number? And what is the downside in documenting it? In case of an eventuality, at least your family is protected. And later on, when you acquire more wealth, you can keep amending your will. Because the last will is considered as a final will. So there are a lot of sophisticated families who have made a will, and they make it a practice to review it every year. And that's the best practices that we have seen.
So how does the registration bit work then? Because, registering the will is a good idea, but if you're saying you're updating it every year, how does that work out?
So one is that it is not mandatory to register a will, but it is strongly recommended to register because it will add more value at the time of contest. It proves the authenticity of the will. Okay, contest can be done in various ways. One is that the will was made under pressure. The will was made under alcohol influence. The will was made when the person was not of sound mind. These are fraudulent signatures. So those kind of things get overridden by just going and registering the will. Because it is quite prominent that you're not under alcohol influence, you're not under pressure, you're not sound mind, you've gone to the registrar office, stood in front of the government officer, stamped it, signed it. So it becomes a more authentic document over an unregistered will. If you've already done a will which is registered and you redo your will, at that point of time, what you need to go is go back to the registrar office and re-register your will on top of your will, because there is a docket number or a ID number that will be generated. Or you go ahead and cancel your previous will and re-register a new will. But in most cases, you can always top up by registering it under the same ID.
Okay.
So re-registration of a will is very easy. Then again, there are other nuances like, a lot of people think that, how do I capture? I will be acquiring more bank accounts in the future. I will be opening up more demat accounts. Every time I do a PMS, there's a new account that is created. Every time I buy a AIF, there's a new account that is created. So You have to simplify your documents by writing out broad ideas. So say, for example, I have an FD with HDFC Bank, which is linked to my savings account. You don't need to write the FD number because FD number will renew every year. You write your bank account number and you say that all my FD is linked to this bank account number, or all my investments linked to this bank account number with this PAN number, so and so. So writing a prominent accounts are important. Like, for example, you have a demat account in which you are doing intraday, you're buying, selling, your Reliance number of shares are changing, Tata shares are changing every day or every year. In that case, you don't need to write down your inventory of shares. All you need to do is capture your demat account number. So all shares linked to this demat account number under folio number or under PAN number so and so with HDFC Bank, for example. That's how you write your will. So you don't need to worry about your accounts being dynamic in nature. You don't need to write your bank balances in the will because they are again dynamic.
Tariq, we get a lot of queries on joint wills, especially again from small families where assets are held jointly and the beneficiaries are also. What are your thoughts on that?
So, before we go to joint will, I'll just touch upon a little bit on joint property.
Please do.
Because we also come across a lot of clients who say that I have everything joint with my spouse.
Absolutely.
Why do I need a will?
Yeah.
Okay, so please understand that one, when you say joint with a bank account, if you really go by the rules, you are not allowed to operate a bank account of a deceased. A joint account or either a survivor status. The term either or survivor is a very misleading term. It is basically for ease of operation in the presence of both people. The moment one person is no more, the account is technically supposed to be frozen. You cannot operate an account of deceased. So an either or survivor status is only for ease of operation during the lifetime of both, not in absence of the other. That is one. So joint accounts are good for operational, but not for succession. Second is that when you come to real estate, you say that I have a house which is joint between me and my wife. Okay, so in our mind, joint means that she becomes the surviving 100% owner of the property in my absence. But realistically, if I don't have a will, then my 50% of the property gets equally distributed to all my legal heirs. And the other 50%, which is my wife, still stays with her. So she will become 50% plus 1/3 of my share if I have distributed between my two children and my wife. She doesn't become the 100% owner. So if my wish is that after me it should go to my spouse, after my spouse it should come to me, then again a joint is not a solution. The same way, coming to a joint will. There is nothing like a joint will as such. It's always better to have an individual will because today your assets may be similar, but tomorrow when one is deceased, the assets are going to multiply in the account of the other. So you will have to still do another will at that point of time. At the same time, executing an executed will doesn't really work because it leads to a lot of complications. Three is that when you submit a will, sometimes the court may just keep the original with them. Or a joint will is ideally something that we discourage our clients to do because it doesn't solve any purpose in any way. Even on a decease of one, it's already an executed will. How are you going to re-execute that? Also, the surviving heir has received more wealth from the deceased now. So percentages have changed. A lot of things have changed. So you still need to redo a will. So you rather have an individual will from day zero.
Right. So what are the areas of concern? So now we've talked about the uses of the will, but what are the areas of concern around the will and how can those be addressed?
So one of the biggest areas of concern in Indian families is that we shy away from facing facts. We think it to be a bad thing if a children comes and talks to us saying, what have we thought about our succession? I mean, like we start feeling our children are waiting for us to go. What is this? What is that?
And actually, children are also very awkward doing that. I mean, we interact with families where children want to because it's an important subject. But
Absolutely. Because
there is awkwardness, of course.
so that awkwardness is something that we have to overcome. It's more of a psychological and upbringing kind of a barrier. Uh, like earlier, we used to not discuss uncomfortable topics with our parents. But today, even education systems have changed. There are a lot of things that are discussed openly in schools, which earlier we used to think it to be a hush hush. The same way, we need to now open up and start thinking and start planning and understanding what our children want. Because there are certain set of families who've already decided that, okay, this set of jewelry my younger daughter likes, that set of jewelry my elder daughter likes. So eventually it's going to go to them. Or this house we bought for my elder son, this house we bought for my younger son. In your mind, you've already done all that homework. But what is the harm in talking to your children about it? Or what is the need of feeling bad if our children bring up that topic with us? Because end of the day, they're only trying to make things simple and easy for them so that they don't have a dispute within the family amongst themselves in absence of the parents. So that is a very big area which we need to psychologically overcome. The other thing is that there are a lot of parents who are not wanting to face situations. I don't want to be the bad one to decide. I don't want to be the bad one to choose. Let them figure it out. So, because you want to be good, you tend to put them into difficulties. Because I have seen families which are very good amongst themselves, but have still started fighting because the parents didn't leave clarity. So why unnecessarily create confusion between the siblings when there is no confusion? Just because you don't want to be the one choosing, or you don't want to be the one facing the, like for example, Dhirubhai Ambani didn't have a will. I mean, I'm sure he had multiple tariqs around him advising him, and but he still didn't have a will. And we saw exactly what happened after that. So I don't know the reasons why he didn't have a will, whether he had a will which didn't come out. I don't know. But we assume he didn't have a will, and we saw what happened. So why reach that situation? I mean, so much of money, which could have been very easily distributed amongst them, had to be fought over. So the importance of will, the importance of our way of thinking has to improvise. Because once we understand the importance that nominee is not working, once we understand the importance joint is not working, once we understand that by not doing a will, it's going to be moving as inherited property and not self-acquired property, automatically the need of the will is higher for streamlining things for a family. It also helps you to consolidate your wealth, because a lot of times the legal heirs don't know what is where. Like the larger pieces of wealth, you may know, okay, one house here, one house there, but small bank accounts, insurance policies, fixed deposits, a lot of things get overlooked because the children don't know, because the parents have never been transparent with the children for various reasons. Some parents are not transparent because they want the children to be self-sufficient and not feel that they're going to inherit so much so that they become useless or stop working. So every parent has a different logic. I'm not saying they are wrong. They are very right from the way they look at it. But from a holistic manner, even if you don't discuss, at least document it for yourself. Don't discuss if you don't feel comfortable, but document it.
So, other than the will, trust is the other mode of estate planning. So, could you briefly take us through, let's say, the pros and cons of a trust, and under what scenarios you feel trust works the best?
Okay, so a will is a static document that comes in play on the demise of an individual. It carries your wishes of how he or she would like to distribute his or her wealth. At the same time, a will can be contested because it needs to get a grant from the court to execute. That's the time when it can be contested by either of the legal heirs or anybody else. So a lot of families start to feel that a will may not be the most sophisticated way to plan a succession. In that case, they start looking at alternative modes of succession. Gift is out of the window because that doesn't work, gifting during lifetime. So that's where they prefer to set up trust. Like a will comes in play on the demise of an individual, a trust is a living body that runs parallelly with you for your benefit during your lifetime and ultimately for the benefit of your legal heirs after you. So in many situations, families prefer to do a trust over a will. Saying, for example, my children are living overseas. They don't have the bandwidth to come to India and execute a will. I rather put them in a trust so that it is smooth transmission for them. Because in a will, assets change hands. In a trust, the underlying beneficiaries change. So you don't need to go down to any court and change the owners. You don't need to transfer anything from the first to the second. You don't need to close bank accounts. You don't need to do anything that. And life continues as seamless as possible. So children living overseas can become a big reason why parents prefer to do a trust over a will. Also, global taxes. There are inheritance taxes in countries like US and UK. Currently in India, we don't have inheritance taxes, but every March, December to March, there's a hue and cry before the budget that inheritance taxes come. A lot of well-connected families that we work with also feel that inheritance tax is coming. I don't know. But people are anticipating inheritance tax eventually coming in India. But in developing countries like US and UK, inheritance tax is already there. So again, there's a lot of confusion in that. What people think is that I need to plan my succession better because my son lives in the US and he will have to pay inheritance tax. Okay, so that's not the case. Inheritance tax is always on the deceased and not on the receiver. Okay, a deceased parent living in India, having its wealth in India, nothing to do with US. India does not have inheritance tax. So on the demise of the Indian parents, when the son inherits the property, they do not pay inheritance tax. Inheritance tax.
Any other estate duties, particularly in the US, I believe there's a limit up to which you can receive certain assets. No?
Nothing. So
what is that $11.8 million limit that is
I'll
there?
come to that. So inheritance tax is always on the deceased. Over here in this case, deceased are Indian parents. India does not have inheritance tax. Whatever amount of wealth they have, how much ever million they have, can get passed on to their legal heirs living in the US without any taxes whatsoever. Now, this net worth of the parents becomes the net worth of the child. And the child is not allowed to gift more than $40,000 in a financial year because the child is a US person. So he cannot transfer his wealth out. It becomes the part of his estate. So anything that he's earned over a period of time, anything that he inherits over a period of time, all put together become his estate now. As a US person, I'm not allowed to give more than $40,000 to anybody in one financial year. Two, if my net worth is above 11.8 million at the time of my demise, at that point of time, my family will have to pay inheritance taxes because now I'm a US person. I have inherited wealth from my parents. I have acquired wealth during my lifetime. And now my net worth is above 11.8 million. I will be subject to estate duties to the tune of 30 to 40% on my demise. So the parents think that my children living in US will have to pay estate duties on the estate they inherit from us, which is not the case. But once they inherit, they can't get it off their name, since they cannot give more than $40,000 in a financial year. So the idea is that instead of parents willing it to the child, they will it to a trust or keep it in a trust so that it doesn't become an estate of the child. And eventually you don't pay 30-40% inheritance tax. So that is how it is planned for the children's benefit without getting into estate duties eventually.
On the child's demise, the family will not have to pay that.
Yes. Two is that this 11.8 million limit which is there, which was earlier 4.8. But now it has become 11.8. And the way the law is contemplating right now, they're looking at bringing it back to 4.8. So there are a lot of people who've exercised the 11.8 million. So you have an option of exercising a lifetime exempt limit. So I can move 11.8 million into a trust up to 11.8 million, and I can use my lifetime exempt limit, which means on my demise, whatever is held on my name, it will be taxed at 30% from zero. because I've used my lifetime exempt. So people who don't have parents who they're inheriting from and they don't have an option of making this trust vehicle to bypass inheritance are gifting money into the trust using the lifetime exempt limit because it is 11.8 today, which is going to get shrink back to 4.8. And once the wealth is in the trust, after which when it grows in the trust, it belongs to the trust. So if this 11.8 tomorrow becomes 20 also or 30 also, it is the assets of the trust, will not be subject to inheritance taxes. So a lot of people misinterpret inheritance taxes from that aspect. But for children living overseas, trust becomes a sophisticated way to manage your succession. Then in case of minor children, husband, wife, I mean, how many of us really travel separately? For us, holiday means traveling together. But there are a lot of families who take different flights and go. I know people personally. I mean, I used to hear this, but today I know people personally who do this, but not many. So if we have a minor child, in absence of the parents, he cannot inherit the assets. Then what happens? Guardian, uncle, auntie, chacha, chachi, it becomes a mess. I rather have a trust for him. Then in case of a special child, he or she is not allowed to open bank accounts, not able to contract and make decisions. Then again, a trust is a better route to manage his estate because at least the wealth is ring-fenced and protected in the trust for the benefit of the child. And no one has the access to misuse it. In case of unmarried daughters, unmarried sons, it is better to give them the wealth in a trust because tomorrow if they don't get well, find a good partner and they decide to call it quits after their marriage, the partner can claim 50% of the wealth at the own at that point of time. But if it is in a trust, it is protected. It cannot be attached. So it makes a lot of advantage and benefits to transfer wealth to your children through a trust than through a will. Also, in case of a litigation, today I'm into business, I'm taking risk, I'm standing as a guarantor, I'm a director in a company. At any point of time, something goes wrong, my entire assets can be attached. But if I have moved my assets into a trust for the benefit of my family and now I'm not a beneficiary of that wealth anymore, in that case, my wealth cannot be attached. So a lot of large business houses have started demarcating personal income and business income and started demarcating and moving personal income into the trust to avoid business litigations or to avoid family litigations or to avoid marital disputes. So there are far more advantages of planning a succession through a trust than a will. Even in case of husband-wife, no legal heirs. Your old age, your retirement, your medical expense, your day-to-day expense, your household expense, everything can be done through a trust. Whereas in a will, if tomorrow you are unable to contract, you have all the money in your bank account, what do? Over here, at least you have a set of trustees who are operating things on your behalf. Ease of management, continuity, everything gets taken care in a trust over a will. While there are many, many advantages of doing a trust, let's understand a few limitations also. Anything and everything that I as an individual can own, a trust can own, barring agricultural land. Trust cannot acquire agricultural land because of the farmer status. There is no clarity that the ceiling of 21 acres can be number of beneficiaries into 21, number of settlers into 21, or number of trustees into 21. There's no clarity on that, due to which trust cannot acquire agricultural land. One. Second is that if I have financial assets in my individual name today, I can transfer them to the trust without any stamp duty, without any capital gains, long-term, short-term, nothing. Even the date of purchase, indexation value remains on my actual date of purchase and not the date of transfer. But if I have real estate in my individual name, transferring it to the trust attracts stamp duty. So if I don't have a pushing need to spend that 5-6% and transfer the real estate into the trust, we advise clients to let the real estate be out of the trust, move your financial assets into the trust.
Actually, that's a concern even with financial assets, because financial assets that are not held in, let's say, a demat form, physical form.
Everything can be moved to the trust without any stamp duty.
How?
So what happens is, say, for example, mutual funds. Even if you buy mutual funds online today, it is not in demat. It is still in physical, online, but it's still in physical. So we convert these physical shares into demat. With mutual funds, we convert it into demat. We do an off-market transfer and then remat it again. So all movable assets can be transferred to the trust without any stamp duty implications, without long-term, short-term. You don't have to sell anything. Okay. It's only the real estate which attracts stamp duty. So we advise clients that you do a will, and in the will, you mention the beneficiaries to be your trust. If it comes to succession through a will, then there is no stamp duty. If it comes through a gift into the trust or settlement into the trust, then there is stamp duty. So a combination of a will and a trust is something that ideally you can use, especially if you have real estate, which all of us have. Then again, if you have shares in bank, shares in company, listed company, unlisted company, promoter-driven companies, all those can be transferred to the trust without any stamp duty implication. So we have a lot of families who have said, let me do a family trust separate and let me do a business trust separate. So that my succession planning for my business is also done. There are families who feel that, I would like to give 20% of the income of my company to my daughter, but I would like to give 100% ownership to my son. So how do you do that? So in that case, you give 100% ownership to the trust. You make 80% owner your son, 20% owner your daughter, or beneficiary owner to your daughter, and you give 100% control of management to your son. So that's the ways and means of fulfilling each wish. So due to which this is a totally customized solutions on need base of each client.
So we've talked about distribution of wealth. Now, wealth protection is also a big requirement for many families, particularly with regard to any potential divorce in the different generations. So how does one sort of ring fence the assets and safeguard them? Let's say if somebody wants to do it through the will route, how does one go about it?
See, you can't protect the wealth through a will. Okay, I have 100 rupees on my name today. On my demise, these 100 will go through my legal aid through a will of mine. But during my lifetime, those 100 are mine. In case if I decide to call it quits in my marriage, I am entitled, or the lady is entitled to claim 50% of my wealth. We'll go to court, she'll get it, not get it, long drawn battle. But her entitlement is 50%. The same way, if I move this wealth into the trust, now I have zero in my name. I'm not a beneficiary of my trust. In that case, she cannot claim anything because I have nothing. So the same way, if you're looking at litigations from the market, if you're looking at business litigations, if you're looking at market litigations, if you're looking at marital disputes, then a will doesn't work. Then an irrevocable trust is what you should look at, where you are relinquishing your ownership into the trust and you are not directly benefiting out of it anymore, which means this wealth is no more yours. I mean, if you go down to generations, you will see that pick up any sensible Gujarati Marwadi family, you will see that the houses are always in the name of the lady. Why? Because it was generationally going that the men go out, they do business, they take risk, they gamble, or their risk appetite is higher. So the house that they live in should be protected. So if you look at history of any Gujarati Marwadi family, you will see that the house is always in the name of the lady. Because they always feel that. So it is not something that new we are trying to create. We are just sophisticatedly managing in a different way. But the logic remains the same. Protection. So a trust is a irrevocable trust is what you should look at. From an asset protection point of view, a will is exposed to all litigations.
So actually this concern comes from a lot of parents also when their children are getting married. So let's say they've already made a will and they have no problems. They want the assets to be transferred to the children subsequently on their demise. But while they are alive, is there a risk to their assets if the children are going through divorces?
There is zero risk to their assets if the children are going through divorces, because the assets do not belong to the child. It is your asset you have received it from your ancestral in form of a will. You are now going to will it to your children, or you have acquired your assets during your lifetime. These are your assets. Something that is yours cannot be attached for someone else's doing. But yes, we have seen situations where the lady has claimed that you are the sole beneficiary and you will inherit so much. So you should give something to me from that. But it doesn't stand in court. There are a lot of families that we have seen or heard about that husband and wife have not filed a divorce yet because the lady does not want a divorce. And the truth is that she is waiting for him to inherit the assets so that she can file for a bigger divorce. So there are all kinds of people. But to answer your question, if it is in the parents' name, no, the child has nothing to do with it. The parents can make a will and give it away for charity. And again, over here, it's better that your parents have willed it to you so that there's no inherited property, which is forcefully to be going to that child. Second is that if your child is during this process going through a difficult time and your will gets triggered, something happens to you and your will gets triggered, then in that case, what will you do? You're suddenly giving away wealth to your son and saying, okay, now give it to your spouse. So you rather have better planning for unforeseen situations like these.
Okay. Tariq, we also have a few families who want to open a non-profit for special causes. The question they have is, what is the difference between a foundation and a trust, particularly from a tax or a legal point of view?
See, a foundation and a trust is the same. There is no technical difference between a foundation and a trust. There could be some difference between a Section 8 company and a charitable trust. So Section 8 companies are more used by corporates. Charitable trusts and others were earlier used by corporates, now still continue to use by individuals. In a Section 8 company, company laws apply and you run it as a company. So you have directors, you have shareholders, you have all of that, which is also for charity. In a charitable trust, a trustee comes in, beneficiaries come in, which is also for charity. So foundation and trust is the same. I mean, there are a lot of things which are categorized as a foundation, like a charitable NGO, foundation. It's just a title, but the underlying operating is same as a trust. Section 8 is different, which is newly introduced a couple of years back, but charitable trusts are going on for generations.
So if somebody wants to open a small NGO, trust is the way to go about it.
Absolutely.
Okay. Okay, I see a lot of questions from our guests, so I think maybe it's time to start taking those. So the first question is, can you please elaborate for a case with no partner or children?
So taking it as an example, where you are a single person, okay, in that case, one, who will you will it to? Either you'll will it for charity, either you'll will it to far off relatives, niece, nephew, grandchildren, I mean cousins, sisters' children, brothers' children. Those are the people you eventually will leave back for, which is okay. But what about it during your lifetime? Tomorrow, if you are bedridden, you are hospitalized, you are unable to contract, in that case, all your money that is there for you is of no use because there's no signatory to your account, there's no money out, there's no free flow of funds. In that case, it is always advisable to set up a trust and be the beneficiary of your own trust. You make this a revocable trust. A revocable trust is a two-way traffic. Assets can be moved into the trust, can be taken back by the settlor at any point of time. The settlor can also be a beneficiary of the trust. It is a very good alternative of a will. Because in this case, I have not relinquished my ownership. I have not transferred my ownership. I have not relinquished my control. I am benefiting out of my own wealth. I still don't need to worry about succession because it's planned through a trust. I still don't need a will for the assets which are moved into the trust. I don't need to go to court. I don't need to get a probate. I don't need a succession certificate. The continuity to my legal heirs continue because they just become, so in a will, assets change hands. In a trust, the underlying beneficiaries keep changing. So my children become successor beneficiaries. All my wealth is consolidated in a trust, so there's no loss of wealth or no missing of assets. Everything is managed through a trust. I have a set of trustees who take care of me during my lifetime and take care of me during my retirement and continue to manage my wealth as trustees on behalf of my siblings over a period of time or my family members over a period of time. So in case of a nuclear family or a single parent, a single person, a revocable trust is a very good option.
Is there any disadvantage in having the sole beneficiary, say spouse, also as the executor?
See, there is no disadvantage of having a spouse as an executor, but your spouse is going to be almost your age. So she running around at that point of time is going to be a concern. Is she legally sound? Is she financially savvy? Is she technically up to date? I don't know. If yes, then okay. But age, what do we do with that? So having a professional executor or a younger executor is advisable, but having a beneficiary executor is not legally incorrect.
Okay. What is better with respect to tax efficiency and passing on assets, will or trust?
Doesn't matter. A trust is not a tool for evading taxes in any manner. A will is again something that comes in play on the demise. Trust is something that runs parallelly with you. So in both cases, from a tax point of view, it is neutral.
Okay. I'm not able to understand this question. Maybe you can, Tariq. For bank and mutual fund assets, as stated during webinar, nominee is not equal to inheritor. How should the will address the inheritor, and in events of nominee not being surviving inheritor or inheritor being different than nominee, how does the process of execution work?
Okay, so what they're trying to say, Vinita, is that I've already done nominees, but what if the nominee predeceases me?
All right, yeah.
Or if there is no nominee and there is a will, so what happens? Or there's a will stating that Vinita is a beneficiary and a nominee stating Tariq is a beneficiary. So in all cases, a will supersedes all nominees. So at any point of time, say for example, you bought an insurance policy 20 years back, that time you had only one son. So you made him the nominee. But over a period of time, now you have 3 children. So when you write a will and you say that the insurance policy, all 3 children will be the beneficiaries of the will supersede all nominees. But the right way to do is take help from your financial advisor and try and streamline your nominees and your beneficiaries of the will as the same person so that there is no confusion and misunderstanding. But that is where the financial advisor adds value, to be able to take care of your requirements and make sure that the current situations are also aligned. So making sure that your nominee and your beneficiary are the same people is the ideal way to do. For some reason, if that's not the case, a will supersede all nominees.
Right. Do assets abroad also come under the scope of will made in India?
Preferably not. You should have a separate will for your overseas assets, because the Indian will follows the Indian laws as per the Indian courts. The overseas will may have, like for example, if you have assets in UAE, then you have to get that will registered in DIFC. You have to have certain rules as per that. So it is always advisable to have individual will for domestic assets and separate will for overseas assets. And in that case, you mention in your will that this will is specific for my India assets and I have a separate will for my overseas assets. Because if your will is going to go for probate and it's going to be stuck in the court for 9 months, 1 year, you will not be able to start the activity parallelly for your other assets. So rather you have separate wills for separate places and keeping in mind the local laws of that place.
What happens if an asset is under loan? Implications for inheritors, or is there a need for insurance?
Ideally, it is always better to insure your loans. You are hedging your risk because eventually the loan has to be paid. Whether you pay, your inheritors pay, you sell the property and square up the loan has to be paid. So if you're getting a term loan at a very reasonable price, you rather buy a term loan and hedge your loan liability then put it through a difficult point of a beneficiary to keep paying for it.
Do we need to have registration of will done at the same place where the real estate is based?
Yes, the same place where your original address is. So say, for example, I have a property in Bombay, but I live in Delhi. My PAN is in Delhi. My proof of address is Delhi. I can register my will in Delhi. I don't need to come to Bombay to register it.
Okay. The other two questions are on trusts. Can a trust be set up in case of a child settled abroad wherein the wealth goes to him or her after a certain time, which they can later remit abroad?
Yes, it can be. So because see, a will is something that comes in play on the demise immediately. So at that time, it doesn't see the age of the beneficiary, situation of the beneficiary, position of the beneficiary. It just gets triggered, it triggers. But a trust can be either time frame defined or objective defined. So you can always say that at the age of 35, you give X amount to my son. At the age of 45, you give Y amount to my son. The balance you give it to him when he has a grandchild, or you give it directly to the grandchild. You can have a time frame defined or objective defined. You can customize the trust to the T to meet your requirement. So there are one more question, Vinita, which we've not covered is difference between an HUF and a trust. So there are a lot of families who run HUFs. An HUF is nothing but a preset designed mechanism as a Hindu undivided family. Earlier, we used to encourage HUF because of 50,000 tax benefit. Now that's also really not the case. Okay, in an HUF, you are molding yourself as per the rules of an HUF. In a trust, you are designing the trust to meet your needs. So it's like a ready-made product or a customized product. Ready-made shirt, हो सकता है लूज होगा थोड़ा कॉलर से या शोल्डर ट्रिप हो रहे होंगे. Customized shirt, you will design it the way you want. So that is the big difference between an HUF and a trust. In an HUF, by default, every member becomes a co-partner. In a trust, you choose your beneficiaries. You can choose to have one beneficiary, multiple beneficiaries, no beneficiaries, charity only. It's totally customized. In a trust, you decide who the trustees are. In an HUF, the eldest member of the family becomes the karta. The assets of the trustee, tomorrow if the karta gets into litigation, the assets of the HUF most likely will be attached. But if the trustees get into difficulty, the assets of the trust will not be attached. The karta is the owner of the HUF. The trustee is the manager of the trust. The owner are the beneficiaries. So there's a huge difference between a HUF and a trust. People are dissolving HUF and moving into trust. Internationally, US, UK don't recognize HUF also. It's an outdated system, whereas the trust is the most well accepted globally and domestically.
Okay. We've come to our last question. If someone has schizophrenia disease and he's married, his parents want that his son's partner should not misuse their property. How can he save it? Similar.
You all ring fence it in a trust. Because everything that is in a trust is ring fenced. Everything that is in an individual name is exposed. So in any kind of situation, minor child, marital disputes, health issues like these, the only way to ring fence your wealth is the trust. In this case, I would insist that you do a trust.
Okay, thank you, Tariq. I think that brings us to the end of the session. A 1 hour session is never enough with you. There is always so much more that we can talk about, but this was really very informative and insightful. And I hope all our guests got some takeaways for their unique family situations. I'd like to thank all of you for joining us on this Saturday morning. As you sign off, you will receive a small feedback survey. We would be grateful if you could spend a few seconds to complete the survey. It will help us in making our upcoming sessions more insightful. So thank you very much and have a great weekend. And thank you so much, Tariq, for joining us today.
Thank you, everybody. It was a pleasure talking to you. Vinita, thank you so much for having us over.
Pleasure to have you. Bye-bye.